Hi, I'm Chef Raphael. Welcome to today's video. Now, I'm excited. My mouth is watering. Today, I'm going to show you how to make an apple pie. It's so simple in terms of the ingredients that I've used and the procedure. On this video, I'll show you how to make the pastry and the apple filling. The pastry is a short crust pastry, and the pie, when it's ready, it looks like this, and you serve it with ice cream. Now, this is homemade ice cream. Homemade vanilla ice cream. I actually have a video that I've done previously. So when you're having apple pie, it's perfect when it's warm. So all you do, ice cream. You can have it plain. Love the crust, it's nice and crunchy. The apples are tart but sweet. And especially when you have with the ice cream, awesome. It's not wet, it's perfect. Watch till the end and you see how simple it is to make it. Let's get started. So if you're new to the channel, please consider subscribing, and if you like the video, hit the like button. Now, when you subscribe, make sure you also hit the bell button because you get notifications whenever I have a new video out. Now, today's recipe, the ingredients, considering this is a very requested recipe, I'm so excited to make it. I have the apples. I have 4 relatively large apples. These are the Granny Smith or the green apples, basically. These are best because when you bake them, they don't mash or crash when they are baked. So the green apples, Granny Smith, whatever variety of green apples that you can get, that's what you should go for. When I was doing my research on apple pies, I also saw that you can also do a mix of different apples. Maybe you can throw in maybe one red one so that you can have different flavors. But for the simplest way to do it, just get 4 or depending on the size, it can either be 5 of the green ones. We also have lemon. I'll do lemon juice from this, half of this lemon. I have sugar 2 types, 2 ways. There's one that I'll use in the flour on the dough and also use a little bit to sprinkle, but I also have sugar that I'll use to mix with the apples. I'll also add some cinnamon powder, some all-purpose flour. And now for the dough, I'm using a short crust pastry. You require all-purpose flour, cold butter. I've actually removed it from the fridge, so it's still cold, and ice cold water or milk. Now this I had put it in the freezer or in the fridge. Basically, it needs to be really cold because when you're going to mix it with the flour to make the dough. Now the first thing I want to start with, let me start with the dough because it also needs some time to rest. Now for the dough you need the flour, so I've already measured it. You can break the lumps, like mine has lumps, you can break them. What I'm going to do is cut the butter into small cubes. It needs to be cold, and the whole point of it being cold is that you do not want you want the butter to mix with the flour, then add them to the flour. Now to this flour, I'll add a little bit of sugar, like 2 pinches, because this is actually a sweet dessert. The sugar is optional, to be honest. You don't have to add sugar, but since it's going to be a dessert, you might as well make the dough or the crust of the pie a little bit sweet. So the first thing, you do not want to overwork this flour. You do not want We want to just start mixing the flour and the butter. and crushing it with your fingertips. And you need to work fast because you do not want the butter to melt, and that's why we are starting with it when it's cold. And what I'm doing is crushing with my fingers while it's covered in flour, and we want it to resemble breadcrumbs. Now you can use a food processor as well, makes it easier and faster somehow. But sometimes you want to also to feel the dough. You want to know whatever you're doing when you have the touch. You know, the touch will actually tell you exactly if it's enough or not. Now you don't want the batter to be fully mixed or crushed into the flour. You want a little bit of smaller lumps as well. And then I'm actually going to make a small well. Stop mixing when the flour resembles breadcrumbs. See what I'm doing? Make a small well. Make a small well, and then add about 3 tablespoons of cold water or milk. It has to be ice cold, so that's about 3. Now I'm going to use a spoon just to mix. You basically want the flour to come together. Actually, I'll add the whole amount of water. That's about 3 tablespoons of water, 45 grams. Again, the reason why you're adding cold water is because we do not want the butter to melt. So I want the flour or the dough basically to form. What I'm doing, I'm just pressing so that it comes together. You want to press it until it comes together. Also, at the same time, you do not want to overwork it. You don't want to fully knead it like the same way you can do any other pastry dough. I mean, like even like the chapati dough. Basically, want that loose flour to come together. It's not sticky. Trying to scoop all that is on the board. So I'm going to cover it with a cling film. So this will go to the fridge, and when you put it away in the fridge, what I will do now, I'll show you how to do the apples. So let's do the apples now. Now, I had said earlier, I have 4 big ones. Now, if you're not sure, you can also have 5 if you're not sure of the size. So the first thing we want to do is peel them. See. Now, sometimes you do get apples that have bruises, like mine here. So when they have a bruise, you'll just trim it off. But when you're buying them, just try and check on them. You don't want them to be so much bruised and then you waste. So first thing you do is cut them in half. And then what I do is cut one side like that, away from the seeds. Then cut another away from the seed. And then you discard this, and then you have pieces without the seeds. I'm going to cut them into about 1 centimeter sized cubes. Also, the amount of apples is actually determined by the size of your baking tin. Now, that's one thing I didn't mention earlier. You need a small or a shallow baking tin. In this case, the one I have is the one that you can actually remove the bottom. This is meant for pies. You can also have one that is not removable. This part is not removable, but try and make sure that you get a shallow one. So I'm also looking at the apples that I have. It should not be too much more than the tray. Actually, I'm not going to use the fourth one that I have, because I can already see that that apple is a lot for this tray that I have. So now cut the apples. Apples tend to oxidize or basically start turning brown. So that's why we actually need the lemon juice. Sprinkle some lemon juice. And actually what right now I'm going to do is add the rest of the ingredients as well. But first, so to avoid them from becoming brown, because actually when they turn brown, they will show on the cooked item, the pie. So a small amount of lemon juice to avoid them from turning brown. And then now to this I'm going to add the cinnamon. That's 1 teaspoon. You can also add nutmeg, maybe half a teaspoon or a quarter teaspoon, depends with your taste. But even if you don't have it, you can skip it. The flour, what the flour will do, it will help it come together, because when you add this sugar, the lemon juice, I'll add slightly less because the sugar was designed for the 4. Because I've used slightly less, I've reduced the amount of sugar. So when I mix like this, what will happen is that the apple will start producing water. That's why I've added the flour. And actually what I'm going to do is to cover this and then put them in the fridge. So it's nice, it's ready for placing into the pie. So right now it's actually a dough. This is a short crust pastry. It's supposed to be rough, so you do not overwork it, because you do not want to work the gluten. You don't want it to be elastic per se. So first thing I need to do is to cut small amount away, because this will be the lid for the pie. So set this aside and work on it later. Dust the surface with flour so it doesn't stick. Rolling while I'm turning it. The idea right now is to try and get it as round that is bigger than the baking tin. Place it in the baking tray on all the sides, especially the edges, like that. Trim off the edges. While you're doing this, try not to pull it. Don't want it to shrink. But in case you run out of dough you don't have enough for covering, you can always make half of the recipe of that mixture of the dough that I've made, which is something, a smaller amount, so that you can use it as a lid. So I've already turned on my oven to start preheating. So we are actually going to bake it in 180 degrees oven. So you do it beforehand. It's cold. Again, because it was in the fridge, it helps. I'm going to pour the apple mixture. And then take my lid. Now before doing that, what I have here is an egg, just beaten one egg. You can add some milk. Take the egg or milk and then applied on the edges of the crust. Then when you place this on top, press it, those edges. It's not a bad thing if you have some holes on these edges, because it actually gives room for the pie to breathe. So I'm actually going to trim off the edges right now. So you have that. Now I want to stick it on the inside. So first thing you can do is to make holes. And when you're doing this, it's also like a design. Don't put too much. Brush. Again, you can also use milk. Part of the design, maybe I can do can also use a knife to poke holes. Again, you need the holes for the to let off steam. So that is ready. Now into the oven. Oven is already hot at 180 degrees Celsius. And it will take, for this one, will take about 40 minutes, but the timing is based on, you want the crust to be crusty, like cooked. It will have a crusty finish, and golden brown or light brown on the top. So you know the pie is cooked when you start seeing it bubbling. The bubbling of the apples inside, they are boiling, and the holes that we actually made with the fork or even with the small knife are what are letting out the mixture from inside the pie. That's a very important step. Apple pie is done. It actually took about 40 minutes. And now, a few notes that I need. First of all, when you remove it from the oven, let it cool down so that you can actually be able to lift the tray like I'm doing. So what I'm going to do, again, because my baking tin, what actually happens first when it bakes, it frees from the sides of the baking tin. And because mine, I can lift up the base, it makes it much easier to remove it. Also, the other thing I didn't mention when I put it in the oven is sprinkle some sugar on top. It will actually give it some nice texture. Usually you divide it into 8. So you can even do small lines like that. That's 1, 2, and then 3, 4. That's into 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, and then into 2. So in my case, what I'll do, I'll just cut a small piece, nice and flaky, and then make sure that the bottom is cut to the end. There you have it. You see, it's nicely compact. You have a crusty crust. Now this you can place in the fridge, and then when you want to serve, just cut a piece and then warm whatever piece that you want in the microwave. And now when it comes to serving, you can eat it plain, but it's best served with some ice cream. So I have some homemade ice cream here. I've actually done a recipe of homemade ice cream, and all this time I've been, especially when I discovered this recipe, there's nothing like homemade ice cream. This is vanilla, so you can either put it on the top or put it on the side, whichever you prefer. It's yours. It's up to you, or just have it plain. And I hope you've learned something new today. Today I was making apple pie. Like I said, you can serve it with some ice cream. And I hope you enjoy yours when you try it out. I am signing out. Make sure you follow me on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. And until next time, goodbye.